first atomic bomb.
He was only 24 years of age. He was fighting a war in a foreign land on the other side of the world for a country that he knew nothing about.
His going away present from the U.S. Army outside of his citizenship paper was a train ticket home to Fort Sheridan, and he was back at work in a week.
It was all this talk about home. That was all we ever talked about.
I remember being down in an air raid shelter underground and hearing the banging and the noise and knocking and wondering when we get up, would the building be still there?
It was a good life. And surprisingly, this guy said, well, welcome home.
Throughout the 20th century, mankind has witnessed the advent of mechanised warfare. We have seen the mobilisation of millions of young men and women from across the globe. Despite maintaining a state of political neutrality since gaining independence from the British Empire in 1921, Ireland, a small peripheral island on the west coast of Europe, has seen her sons and daughters fight in all major conflicts this century. From the fields of Flanders to Franco-Spain and the Vietnam conflict, Irish men and women have left home in search of work or adventure and found themselves fighting under the flag of another country. Many have never returned, and those who did spoke little of what they encountered. Over the course of this documentary, we hope to share some of their stories with you.
In the 1930s, you see, Ireland was a disastrous country and to live in, and there was no work or anything at all like that, and the men had to go. And there were lots and lots and lots of men, especially from West Cork, that joined the Navy.
Small little place, tucked in the mountains and between the bogs and the River Shannon on one side, and he was from County Limerick. And as I say, from a small farm, no work, nothing happening, had no choice but to bail out.
Things were tough back in the 40s and 50s. And when I got out of school in 1956, there was no work. I mean, there was absolutely nothing.
My sisters were very happy that I was, they were excited about this going off into the wild blue yonder. But I thought my father and mother would have been a little, annoyed maybe as such because they were old. My father would have been not old, but I didn't think him old. But when I look back on it, he was in his middle 60s. My mother would be in her 50s or so. But when you were going to America, you might think, might never see you again.
Some Irish joined foreign armies for employment. Others joined on principle, and a few joined for adventure. However, those who immigrated to the United States were eligible for the draft. With the prospect of gaining citizenship, many answered their new home's call. This was the case for Michael Noon, who left Ireland in 1956 in search of employment. Upon arrival to the US, he was certified 1A. Rather than wait to be drafted, he volunteered for the United States Air Force. And in 1971, he was sent on an overseas assignment to Vietnam.
If I waited until I was drafted in the Army, that's where you'd normally go, you'd be put in infantry. I wasn't really too happy about infantry, but I talked with a lot of my friends that were over there, and they recommended I go in the Air Force. But I took the test for the Air Force, I took a test for the Navy, I took a test for the Marine Corps. I didn't bother about the Army.
So I decided that I asked this man in particular what service should I go for, and he says the best service to go for was the Air Force, because with the Air Force they would train you. They would train you into a field of something that you'd be qualified, that you would be good at. So that's what I did. I volunteered in for the Air Force.
They got a choice. They got two choices, actually. They got one choice: you join the army, you go and you do your stint in the war, or else you took the boat and you came home. And, well, he had known that there wasn't a whole pile at home for him, so he joined the army, and that was a bit of basic training in America before they went, and then they went to Japan. They got only a couple of weeks training in Japan, and after that then they went to the war zone. They went to Korea, and he was only 16 days in Korea when he was killed in action.
I asked him about, when you got your draft notice, what would you have done? He goes, I didn't really have a lot of choice. He goes, if I came back to Ireland, I get labeled as a coward because everybody would have known my business. He didn't, you know, or he goes, my other choice would have been I would have went back to Ireland and turned around and emigrated either to Canada or Australia to move on to, you know, something bigger and better, so to speak. So he goes, it was the right thing to do. He went and served the country. That wasn't his own.
I always wanted to join the Navy. I was 16 and a half when I joined my first ship. And we were meant to go to sea and meant to take the Germans on, meant for the fight, if you like. We were just ordinary 15 or 16-year-old boys. There was a gang of us together, of course, as well. And we that was it. We met for the road.
So I was at work at this department store, and I get a call from the recruiter, probably about 10 o'clock. And he wanted to know if I'd be ready to go by 3 p.m. that same afternoon. And I says, what if I say I wouldn't? He says, well, it could be another 5 or 6 or maybe 2 months, 5 or 6 weeks later, or maybe 2 months before I get a call again. So I said, okay, I'll be at a Greyhound station at 3 o'clock.
During the chaos of war, lines of communication are difficult to maintain. This was especially true for much of the last century, when people relied on mail routes. Con Glanton from West Cork has first-hand knowledge of the difficulties in maintaining communication. He was born into a military family, and his father served with the Royal Navy. At the age of 15, Con followed in his father's footsteps. He served as an engineer on HMS Illustrious during the Second World War. He retired to West Cork as a lieutenant commander in 1977.
My mother wrote to me, despite the fact that she had all the other children to look after, every Sunday night. Every Sunday night. Well, your letters were censored. And they very often took 4 or 5 weeks to get home by ship. The airmail came in later on in the war, but early on in the war, the letters took a long time. And very often they didn't get there at all because the ship carrying them was sunk or something.